A one-off program is not going to help people get out of poverty. Are these programs needed? Absolutely. Is it the standalone thing that we need to get people out of poverty? No. What I got out of today's session with the Urban Institute is that we need coordinated strategy to really help people get out of poverty. And I wrote a post earlier from what I gathered from the meeting, and working families, people who are actually working, are not making enough to actually survive. So, what does this actually look like to get people the support and the help that they need? I've been blessed enough to work for the Center for Poverty Solutions, where we've been working with people who are on the ground that are actively helping each other get the right amount of support to gain access to work and survive in their day to day living and even thrive in some areas. And doing this work and thinking about the last couple of years working with different nonprofits really had me digging deep into what does this system of workforce look like? And what I learned from all of this work is that things need to be hit on different layers in order for somebody that is coming from a position of poverty to actually get into a position of thriving without throwing things off course. Because what tends to happen, and this has happened to myself too, is as soon as you get a little bit more stable, financial situation hits, and then things fall apart again. And I learned through my wins and through my failures that the issue wasn't a personal problem of laziness or ignorance when it comes to finances. It was actually a problem when it came to the structure and the system that I had set up for myself. So I took some notes. I'm reading off my notes on some things that could possibly be a solution when it comes to creating that. Oh my God, I am forgetting the word. When it comes to creating that connected structure. So let me jump into it really quick. So I broke it down into three layers. So this is how I personally see it. It may be research um, and programs out there that are already doing this. And if they do, please let me know. I would love to know. And the way that I separated it out was the outer bridge of support, the inner bridge of support, and how we coordinate that together. So the outer bridge is the stuff that a lot of these programs offer, which is the stipends, which is helping with childcare, which is helping with transportation, those type of things. But we need stipends that cover actual real costs of living, which can be difficult. It's easier said than done, right? Because these programs, they face a lot of issues when it comes to funding, and they face a lot of issues with who they can serve. So there's a lot of limitations on who they serve and how they serve those people. So we have to look at how can we get our programs to be able to provide that level of support. Also looking at housing stability during the transition period. And I want to pause a bit to talk about that transition period, because when you're in a place where you can't afford anything, you just get used to it. And this is coming from somebody who has been in that position before. Um, you get used to being broke. You get used to not paying the bills. So you just deal with whatever consequences come with that, and you're just getting through the day. When you are working and you're getting income coming in, you get used to that and you're able to calculate, okay, I'm getting this much coming in, and this is what that's going to go towards. And if I have something else that I need to pay for, I'll figure that out and strategize it. But that point of interim, that point of change where you're going from a position of being broke and now you're trying to get yourself to a position where you have something coming in, that is almost the most difficult part to go through, because you're going through a huge change and you're going to win some things and you're going to lose some things at the same time, and you need to be stable throughout that transition, and it's really hard to maintain on your own. So housing stability is one of those things. um, going from shelters to an apartment, depending on where you go to, I was in a program where you have to go through um, a transitional housing. So I went from being in a shelter and being with other people, and then I was in a transitional program where I had my own space with me and my kids, and you had to attend certain meetings, do certain check-ins, look for work, but then also apply for Section 8, and there's another one, low income housing. You're applying for those things at the same time. And depending on if you find a good enough job, you may disqualify yourself from actually getting Section 8 or getting low income housing because now you have income. So then you can't apply for those things anymore. And you now have to look for regular housing. But with regular housing, you have to make three times the amount of rent to actually qualify for regular housing. So this is the issue that a lot of us are going through when it comes to that transitional point in our lives, because then you have to make a decision. You have to make a decision on, do I just not look for high paying work so I can get the Section 8, so I can get the low income housing, or do I just go for that work and try my luck with going for a regular apartment where I have to pay, regular rent, probably find a co-signer because my credit is not great, and then you run into issues that route too. So we have to come up with a realistic plan of what housing is going to look like for somebody that's going through a transition period. Also, flexible scheduling. That was a huge issue when my kids were younger, is figuring out where I can work because I have kids that are in school that get out at 3 o'clock. And if I live in a certain area, they might not get transportation coming from the school or the daycare back home. So I physically have to be there to pick them up at 3 o'clock. So that limits the type of work that I can find because most places are what? 9 to 5. So we have to look at what does scheduling look like when it comes to people who have kids or they're taking care of their parents, and also dealing with transportation. I have talked to individuals who would work jobs but then become stranded after their shift was over because the buses stopped running in certain areas and they could not get away home. And then there's also genuine mentorship, like actual mentorship. Like I was really blessed to have some really great mentors in my life. And this is not just a thing for networking, but this is somebody who has navigated the things that you have gone through, and it can genuinely help you with what you're trying to do without shaming you. Like they actually hear what you're going through and you don't feel shame, because once you feel shame, once an individual feels shame, which I can do a whole nother video about shame, but once an individual feels that, it can drastically impact how they operate from that moment on. So you want to be very aware of that. And then client and income pipeline support. So for those who are running their own businesses, those who are doing consulting, it can be so. Like one of the challenges that I dealt with when I was in my transitional spots, especially as an entrepreneur, was dealing with clients, but then also asking for what you're worth. A lot of financial issues will come up even when it comes to selling your work to clients. Um, there's a lot of anxiety that builds into that, and that should also be addressed when it comes to supporting supporting people going through a transition. So these are just examples of that outer bridge. And then that inner bridge, um, going through real therapy, like real effective long term therapy, not just, a crisis hotline, even though those things are needed. People need consistent, trauma informed mental health support. That is really, really essential, no matter where they are in their life. Like to go from poverty into work, like there's some things that you do have to address on a financial level too. And then also nervous system regulation tools. I've been speaking really highly on managing our nervous systems because at times our body will respond to things way faster than our brain can actually catch up to it. And sometimes we'll get ourselves into situations that's not the best for us, only because our bodies are reacting to what it wants to do to protect itself. So we really want to look at practical support for what chronic stress and instability does to a body's threat response. Something that happened to me when I got my first good job. This was when I was coming from the IC Stars program and I was transitioning into ThoughtWorks, a ThoughtWorks internship. And when I went through the interview process and I was offered the job, I was very scared. I was so scared that not only did I cry when I got the phone call, I was very very scared that it was going to be taken away from me. I felt that way, and I haven't told anybody about this, so this is exclusive for LinkedIn. Um, I felt this way for an entire year while I was at ThoughtWorks. I always felt like this was going to, no matter how hard I worked, no matter how much I contribute to a project, no matter how innovative I am while working on a project, I always felt like it was going to be taken away from me at any given moment for any given reason. Um, and luckily, it never got taken away. I was able to kind of walk away on a good note from ThoughtWorks. Um, but there's there's anxiety in that. When you come from a place of poverty, you are constantly stressed out about whether or not you're going to get thrown off and go back to where you were. And you carry that with you in the places that you walk in. And then financial crisis literacy. So this is really major, and I talked a little bit about this with some people. And what you really want to dig into is not just the normal budget and save. Every time I come across a financial coach or a financial book or a financial workshop that talks about budgeting and saving, I just want to rip my hair out. And that is no offense to all of my coaches out there, but we are dealing with the reality of people who are in debt. And this is not just, I owe some credit card bills type of debt. This is really what happens when invoices are delayed, what happens when bills are piling up, what happens when you're dealing with the IRS, what happens when you have to pay the daycare and you're behind and you've been begging for them to take your children in so you can continue working, but you might not get a paycheck for 2 weeks. Like, these are the realities that people deal with on a day to day basis. So as soon as you hear save, people are like, from where? From what? How? So we need to really change how we talk about financial literacy and really go into financial crisis literacy and how do we handle that. Also, building a shame free container, which can be really difficult to do. A lot of people come into spaces very depleted, very frustrated, and anything that can trigger shame can just become a downward spiral from there. And then there's the third layer. So a lot of people don't talk about this third layer is how do we coordinate this? Because what's happening with a lot of programs is there's a bunch of one-off programs that you get through it. You might graduate from it, you might get your stipends, all of that stuff, but then things are falling apart on all the other aspects of your life. So we really need a navigator, somebody who can navigate this person's entire structure, their whole picture, and figure out where we need to plug and play, and what needs to be done to make sure that they are steady throughout this transition. Somebody, and I met someone a while ago that was really good at this, but she was really good, and I wish I can think of her name, and it's killing me that I can't remember the name. Um, but she had like a woman's millionaire program. So if you're watching, like, please let me know. Um, but she was really good at this with school. Like if you are going back to school, there's so many things and programs and methods that you can use to keep yourself stable while you're going to school. And I think the same thing needs to happen when a person is in a apprenticeship or a training program, is how do we utilize that to the best of our abilities to put them uh, get them in alignment with the right programs, with the right resources, with the right things that can hold them over until they're able to get stable income. So, and this could be a tech system, to be honest. The more that I'm talking through this, the more that I feel like this can be a tool that an individual, of course, like with the support and therapy, of course, that can't be tech, but I'm thinking for the coordination, this could be a tool that a person can log in and do a plug and play, um, and do it in a way that doesn't, because my first thought is it's going to tell on them. Um, like if they are doing something that gives them, I guess, too much benefits, I don't know, but like it is something that you think about um when you're trying to pull yourself out of poverty, is if I do make a little bit more than what I expected, is something else going to be taken away from me. That's always the fear that crosses people's minds. But going back to this list, and not the tool, that was just a side thought. But someone who knows the programs, the benefits, the eligibility threshold, and can sequence them in the right order for this specific person, I think tech can be a solution for this. But I'm gonna pin that. I'm gonna pin it and save it for a later date. Cross program integration, so that getting a job does not trigger loss of child care before income stabilizes. And then a single point of trust, because I think this is really big too, is is having someone you can trust, where you can say, this is my strategy, this is what I'm doing, without risking having something being taken away, because that's the biggest thing, right? So also, data is it's a whole thing. I can do a whole video on that, but also data coordination, which can be difficult, especially between providers. Given a participant consent, something that was good, which I don't know if I can fully talk about this, so I'll kind of be vague with it. There was a program that was a collaboration between two organizations, and that piece, they beautifully were able to navigate um, the stipends for the people in the program. We ran into this type of issue, and we wanted to make sure that nothing was taken away by them doing this program. And the way that they were able to coordinate it was really beautiful. And like I love that they were able to do that. And I think more programs should definitely do that. And I think that's the whole, I guess that could be a takeaway from this. I don't even know how long I've been recording, maybe 10-minute conversation, which is how can programs coordinate with each other where something is not taken away by them doing both programs, but something's actually gained for the person who's participating. And then also, this is really good that I want to take away just for the work that I'm doing with the Center for Poverty Solutions, which is a policy evaluation question that should be applied every time we think about policy, which is, does this policy move families closer or further away from economic security? So, for my policy people, this is the question we want to ask ourselves. Does this move families closer or away from economic security? If we can plug in all the pieces of what would a family gain, what will they lose, what's at risk, what's the behavior going to be like for a family who's going through this situation, um, what does that look like? And overall, all of these things need to exist for this to work. If that inner bridge is taken away while we're doing the programs and providing that support on a program level, the chances of that person not being able to get through it are much higher because they're not getting support when it comes to that inner work to help them mentally get through the programs, to help them not self sabotage, to not have them feel depleted when they're going through this, to have them to be able to trust somebody while they're doing this program. If we take away that outer bridge while working on the inner bridge, they may be getting, support mentally and all of that, but they're dealing with unstable chaos when it comes to their housing, their income, their education, all of that type of stuff. So they're fighting a battle while trying to, get to a stable place mentally. And then without that coordinated piece, then a person is going to be navigating all of this by themselves and they're going to drop the ball somewhere. And it takes more than just a person to be able to handle this. It takes more than just a singular program to be able to handle this. It's going to take collaboration and it's going to take real hands on, real on the ground support. So these are just my thoughts. If you stuck around this long, thank you for sticking around this long. If you want to learn more about the Center for Poverty Solutions, you can contact myself at EAIMIUWU at illinoispolicy.org. You can also contact Dr. Eddie Cortegay at Illinois Policy. And I think that's everything. I think that's it. I think I rambled on enough, and I think my phone is about to die. So see you all next time.